Hello, everyone. Welcome to Diaspora Glitch Podcast, a space where we explore the complicated relationship between home and abroad, identity, belonging, public policy, and private experience. Today, we are talking about Nigeria's economy, but this is not simply a conversation about graphs, percentages, exchange rates, or government projection. It's about a young person who enters the market with the same amount of money and returns with a smaller bag. It's about a father who usually go out with same amount of financial projection but could bring back nothing home. It's about a professional abroad who receives another message from home beginning with the word, please, can you help? It's about a student who studied his whole life, earned a degree, developed new skill, but still cannot imagine an independent life. And it's about what happens politically when millions of people begin to feel that the economy is not just failing them, it is shrinking their future. Nigeria is moving steadily towards the 2027 general elections. Economic debate almost certainly will be central to this contest. The government will point to reforms, stabilization, and emerging growth. Many citizens will point to the cost of transport, housing, education, and basic survival. Between these two stories lies the real Nigeria. To help us unpack this space, I am joined by a development economist whose experience cut across academia, consulting, public service, and not-for-profit sector. Victor Alikor has worked extensively in the development and financing sector, public finance management, social protection, education financing, energy, at the same time in women economic empowerment. He currently serves as a senior economist at the head of partnership and resource mobilization in Abuja, Nigeria. He is also a grant and development financing specialist who has helped secure more than 75 million US dollars in project financing across Nigeria, Canada, the United States, and the United Kingdom. So welcome to Diaspora Glitch Podcast.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Good to have you on the call.
It's a pleasure to have you also on this podcast. Thank you for making the time. Before we enter the statistics of Victor, let me begin with something personal. You have studied development economics, advised organizations, and worked closely to the machinery of public policy. But you are also a Nigerian living through the same economy as everyone else. When did Nigeria's economic crisis stop feeling like an abstract policy problem and become personally real to you?
Well, if I'm candid with that amazing question, since I was born, since I became a Nigerian, I mean, if you look at some economic historians will tell you during the structural adjustment program, that was where everything crumbled. Recent historians will also tell you that recent policies by the government, I mean, the removal of subsidy. Some persons will tell you the floating of the exchange rate, which I think is one of the most impactful, actually. Some will also tell you the recent tax reform bill, that is reducing the disposable income of every average Nigerian. Basically, if you look at the question, I like to look at it from the numbers, statistics, right? If you look at what the numbers are saying around, poverty numbers, 63% of Nigerians live below $3 per day. 63% of Nigerians live below 4,200 for context, right, on a daily basis. Look at the numbers around, affordable housing. Over 20 million Nigerians lack access to affordable housing. That's the highest in the world. Nigeria is the worst place to give birth for, infant mortality rate for children within the age of 0 to 5. Nigerians are the highest people in the world that lack access to electricity. 85 million people. If you also look at number of out-of-school children, especially in the northern part of Nigeria, it seems to be worse, between 18 to 20 million as at the last count. The numbers are mounting, the challenges are increasing by the day. These are basic issues that I think borders both the government and perhaps development economists like myself.
First, I'd like to thank you for setting the scene in this conversation with these statistics. As a development economist, when people discover your profession and what you do, what is the question they ask you most often in relation to the challenges in Nigeria?
So one of the questions they ask me is, conventional questions I hear is, how rich is Nigeria, right? And then some persons think Nigeria is a rich country. But I tell people that Nigeria is a very poor country, but with potentials to be rich, right? And if I want a provide more context to that, if you look at a country with over 230 million people population, the sixth largest country in the world by population, the largest country in Africa by population, the third largest economy in Africa, again by GDP, we shouldn't have, a GDP around slightly above 300 billion US dollars. That's too small for over 230 million people. And then to provide more context, right? If you look at our labor force, it's only 1 out of every 3 Nigerian that is working. 1 out of every 3 Nigerian that is within our labor force of around 85 million to 90 million people. So what that tells you is that we have a lot of Nigerians who are either not up to the working force, which is 15 to 64 years, who have the youngest population in the world. So if you also look at that, if 1 out of every 3 Nigerian is what is within our labor force that is working, that is producing or contributing economically to our growth, out of that 1 that is even working, a huge number of them are doing what we call underemployment. They are working below their productive capacity. You find, for instance, engineers driving keke. They can do better than that, right? If gainfully employed. You can find, medical doctors selling something little on WhatsApp because, they're unable to secure a good job, or the job they secured can't meet their basic needs. So you hear people ask me, Victor, Nigeria is a rich country, we have oil, but I tell them, no, we are not actually. If you look at the numbers, but we have the potential to be rich. And then just to provide more context to it, right? If you look at the 4 largest economy in the world, the first is the US, the second is China, the fourth is India. And these countries are also the largest by population. So that's just to show you that there's a strong relationship between the size of the economy and population. But in the case of Nigeria, Nigeria is not even among the top 40 biggest economy in the world, despite being the 6th largest by population. So I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's like having a large family size with little or no quality education without any economic impact. Basically, that's what it means.
Yeah, this context is really important place to begin, because economic policy is ultimately judged not by the elegance of its design, but by what it permits ordinary people to do with their lives. And from what you said now, it's clear that in the Nigerian context, we are far from what the ideal state should be. Speaking about the economy, Nigeria's economic story currently contains what appears to be a contradiction. There is a projection of stronger economic growth. Inflation has moderated from earlier peaks under the rebased official measure. Government officials say painful reforms are beginning to stabilize the economy. So I'd like to ask, millions of households describe their daily reality using words such as hunger, fear, exhaustion, and uncertainty. Can you help us interpret this honestly? Can an economy be improving statistically while life is still becoming harder for a large part of the population?
Fantastic. So if you look at it from basic economics, right? We have the concept we call economic growth and economic development. Economic growth is simply increase in GDP. Economic activities in your country is increasing, which is expected, right? But economic development is a step further from just increase in economic activities. You go a step further to say these economic activities that are increasing is having positive impact in the lives of the citizens. So what we are seeing is mere economic growth. It's possible the economy can grow without it having zero impact on the lives of the citizens. Take, for instance, right, like an oil-dependent economy like Nigeria, where we depend on oil for a major source of, revenue. So the oil sector employs very few fractions. In fact, it's one of the least sector that employs a large number of Nigerians. They employ the least number of Nigerians because it's capital intensive. Doesn't involve a lot of human labor, right? Oil and gas. And that's our mainstay of our economy, right? If this sector that don't employ a lot of Nigerians can be doing well, oil prices currently is doing well because of the Russian Ukraine war, the US-Iran war, right? It's doing well. The numbers are going up, but it doesn't have any significant impact in the life of citizens. It's just mere increase in economic activities, mere increase in revenue for the government. But it doesn't have any impact. But I also want us to bring it down to the basic needs of life: food, shelter, and clothing, right? And then more recently, scholars are including education, basic education, and primary health care.
Yeah.
So if you look at food, you must get a job or have a business to do for you to be able to afford food on your table. Now, Nigerians are no longer talking of even 2 square meal. People are battling with 1 square meal. Nobody's talking of 3 square meal, right? That's for food. There are no jobs. People lack access to good jobs. Even when you see jobs, they are not decent jobs. They are low paying jobs. That's on one part. If you look at shelter, which is housing, I told you Nigeria is the worst in terms of numbers. Over 20 million Nigerians lack access to affordable. There's no mortgage system. I mean, rentage is expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, people can't build houses. And then if you go to the third one, which is clothing, right? If you don't have a means of livelihood, food, I mean, you don't have a job, your business is not doing well, you're battling multi-taxation or battling government policies. How do you even clothe yourself? Then go to education. Even an average Nigerian now wants to go, even if it's a low-budget private school. That's what they prefer. Or an average Nigerian wants, at least, you can't even use government hospitals. Myself, I have pains I've been battling on my shoulder for over 6 years, right? And then you go to a national hospital in Nigeria and somebody is telling you that arthroscopy machine that is supposed to be used to conduct a surgery on my shoulder was last seen in Nigeria in the late 2000, right? So I have to look for $15,000 to go to India to do a surgery. Who can afford that? I mean, you can't, if you're paying out of pocket, even national health insurance scheme that the government has done, a lot of people have not enrolled because they're not efficient. Okay, even look at emergency numbers. If you have an accident, 911, we don't have those kind of systems in Nigeria. I mean, there are a lot of issues, and these issues are interconnected, to be honest.
Yeah. Victor, thank you for this expansive scope with this reviewing these issues. If I understand in plain language, when government says inflation is slowing, that does not necessarily mean Gary, rice, transport, or rent has become cheaper. It may simply mean prices are increasing less rapidly than before.
That's correct.
Then it makes sense to understand this. I would like to deepen the conversation a little bit to drive us further with statistics. The World Bank has estimated that around 139 million Nigerians are living below the national poverty line, and you already captured that. I'd like to ask, these numbers can become emotionally meaningless because it is difficult to visualize. What does poverty at that scale do to a society beyond the obvious lack of money? What does it do to trust, family, relationship, crime, education, health, and democratic behavior?
So let's even start as an individual, right? I mean, hunger is an evil to every human. I mean, that's the worst form of what can happen to any individual. A lot of Nigerians are battling hunger. I mean, some are battling acute malnutrition. It erodes your self-esteem. It erodes your confidence. It outsources your decision and your thinking. I mean, it puts you on a dependency benchmark where you have to depend on either people begging or even the government for survival. If you look at it, affects your choices. I mean, you have limited choices. It affects your relationship for those who want to get married. I mean, young people, they are unable to find spouses, even when they're of marriageable age, right? I mean, it has its social impact. You begin to see young people venturing into crime. You begin to see guys, for instance, doing internet fraud. You begin to see ladies doing prostitution, right? I mean, these are not intended choices, but the economy has made it so. And then if you look at it from the macro level, the impact on the economy. I mean, hunger is one of the greatest impacts that is influencing insecurity in Nigeria. And I've said it that if you have the best war machines, if you have the best arsenals, you have the best tech equipment, we can't fight insecurity in a society where people are hungry and living in squalor, in penury. I mean, some of these people are not asking for luxury. They just want to eat, feed, clothe themselves, have the basic needs of life. And they are not afforded that opportunity. And they are left with no option than to venture into crime. And that's why I believe that any of the violent extremism or violent act in Nigeria, whether Boko Haram, banditry, terrorism, all of them have the human resources to sustain it for decades in Nigeria because people are hungry, people don't have any source of livelihood. And if you also look at the, society pyramid, it's supposed to be small elite, large middle class, and then small number of poor people. But in the case of Nigeria now, it's very small elites and then very large poor people. So the middle class has been eroded.
So that is basically two worlds in Nigeria. It's either you're rich.
Either you're rich or you're poor. For instance, if 63% of people are living below $3 per day, that's the global benchmark for poverty, 63%. But that's absolute poverty. That's not relative poverty. So if you look at multidimensional poverty, that numbers might get up to 85% or 90% of Nigerians. I don't know if you understand how serious it is. So you can't have a large middle class, which means 139 million Nigerians, according to the World Bank.
This is really revealing coming from you, and this helps us to transit into political attitude and leadership. You already highlighted earlier how hunger can make a man to question his identity. For example, I would like to ask Victor. Recently, a statement widely circulated online attributed to the president where he says hunger has existed before I was born. I mean, we should be careful here because I've not found a definitive official transcript authenticating that exact wording. But the remark has circulated widely because many Nigerians believe it captures a broader attitude they already fear, that hunger is being treated as an ancient, unavoidable condition rather than an urgent policy failure. Victor, let us examine both the economic and the communication. Why might such language feel politically damaging during a severe cost of living crisis as many Nigerians experience now?
So basically, part of what you find in the political arena is what we call blame shifting, right? So one of the laziest things people can do is just to shift blames to successive or previous governments. You knew those challenges were there, right? You had a manifesto. Come on, manifest your manifesto. That's what people are saying, right? You had promises of XYZ you want to do. And then people are telling you, do those promises you gave during the electioneering campaign that you were going to do XY. Do it, right? I mean, in all fairness too, we have also seen that there have been decades of misrule in the past. Successive government didn't start with this administration, but the administration knew these challenges exist, promised they can solve the challenges, right? And you know the way the Nigerian political sphere work, the first 4 years is when they truly do what they can do. The second 4 years is to consolidate power, to think of who succeeds them and all that. And I tell people, what you can't do in your first 4 years, there's every likelihood you can't even do better in your second 4 years. Because I mean, the second term when Nigerians don't owe you any vote anymore. So you can do whatsoever you like and then get away with it. But the issue is there is hunger in Nigeria. Did it start with this current administration? In all fairness, no, it didn't. But maybe the scale now is different.
In other words, Victor, what you're saying is that technically defensible statements, cannot ultimately represent good leadership.
Yes. So let me give you an example, right? Part of the challenge we have in Nigeria, we don't plan for the long term. People plan for short term. People have short term agendas. We have a party that is in power currently. They have ruled for 8 years. The current administration supported them to bring them on board, right? They have a development agenda. And after 8 years of the past administration, a new administration has a different development agenda, despite being the same political party. I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
Yes.
So we don't think on the long term. There's no party ideology that says, just like you have in the US, Democrat or Republican, this is our ideology about governance. Whether or not administration change is the same. We have similar ideologies. This is entirely different. The past administration focused, for instance, on railway, right? Constructed railways in some states in Nigeria, try to connect some regions. The current administration is talking of superhighway, right? You see the difference. The current administration, past administration left subsidy. There was subsidy payment. This current administration removed subsidy. Different policies. The past administration they managed the exchange rate. It was between 500, 600. The current administration is floating the exchange rate to leave it to the forces of demand and supply. For an economy like Nigeria that exports little or nothing except crude oil, you can't float your currency. I tell people, Nigerian naira is stronger than South Korean currency. Well, South Korea is among the top economy in the world. They are a highly industrialized nation.
So shockingly so.
So their focus is to devalue their currency so that their goods become cheaper in the international market. You know, so many of the South Korean cars that we use in Nigeria, a lot of them, electronics and all that. Surprisingly, South Korea is one of the nations in the world that have no natural resources, but they are doing incredibly well. This is leadership. I've read books well enough. If you look at countries like South Korea, Japan, China, Taiwan, right? If you cascade it down to Africa, look at recent countries like Rwanda that is doing quite well in Africa. None of these leaders that transformed these nations stayed in power less than 15 years. None, not one. Not one stayed up.
So you're basically arguing that for meaningful leadership and economic development to happen, there should be more more space for political office.
Stability in leadership. Yes, there should be stability in leadership.
In a country like Nigeria that is sharply divided along religious and ethnic lines, how do we work out such possibility in order to ensure that this kind of thing works?
So I agree. Like I said, none of the leaders in those countries, minimum they stay is 15 years and above. Some scholars have even made arguments that we need benevolent dictators like what we have. Dictators that are benevolent, like what you have in Russia, right? He's a dictator but benevolent, like what you have in Rwanda. He's country first, but he's a dictator, right? And then you have illiberal government, like what you have in North Korea, some of those countries. These are arguments. But the point I'm trying to make, right, is that why you say the countries are divided. And I agree. That's why persons have argued for regional government. Take, for instance, the southeastern region. You can fact check what I'm telling you. Was the second or the third fastest growing economy in the world when we gained independence during the First Republic, before the coup d'etat. The Southeast was the second or the third fastest growing economy in the world. Regional government. That's why you hear regional government through fiscal federalism. Let everybody manage their resources. The current economic structure we have is parasitic. It doesn't encourage hard work. It doesn't encourage effort. If Benue State is the food basket of the nation, they are very good with food. They should focus on agriculture. If the southeastern part of Nigeria is good with trade, they should focus on trade. If South is good with producing oil, they should focus on oil. If the northern part of Nigeria is good with agriculture, or maybe commerce, or maybe textile by virtue of animals in those regions, they should focus on. So you focus on areas of your comparative advantage, and then you run a regional government and remit something to the center. Decentralized power is too. You're hearing recent conversation around state police because the central police is not working. You're hearing recent arguments around energy. States can now have the powers to create their own electricity because the central electricity cannot work. Basic things like primary health care is the responsibility of local government and states because they are necessary. Basic things like universal basic education, the responsibility of local governments and states because they are necessary. They are not centralized. That's my argument. So the president of Nigeria is too powerful that a president even appoints as little as a vice chancellor of a university. That's to show you how powerful the Nigerian president. We need to decentralize these things for systems to work, for institutions to effectively function.
This will suppose, Victor, that it will be unfair in the light of this analysis to judge the administration ahead of the election through what people can afford to eat, where they can afford to live, and whether their children can find work.
If you ask me, it's not purely unfair. So let's give credit to certain things that the administration have done. Look at the foreign reserve, for instance. It's $52 billion. That's amazing.
Yeah, but how does it translate to the life of the ordinary man, which is the central issue here?
No. So these things are not quick fix. Let's be honest. These are economic issues we're discussing. They are not quick fix. They also need time. And that's where you see the administration tell you that they need time, macro numbers. For instance, inflation is dropping. Let's be honest. Let's give them that fairness. Foreign reserve is doing well. Our currency is fairly stable, right? There's increased confidence now by foreign investors in the Nigerian market. Let's be honest.
Could economic hardship override, ethnicity, religion, and party loyalty ahead of the election? Do you think?
Yes. So, my father used to say something. If you have never gotten fake, you will not appreciate original, right? And certain persons will tell you that they have suffered well enough to now know the right decision to make. If elections are free and fair, if the people's choices are respected, I think it will reflect in the vote. The issue now is, like I said, the institutions of the state saddle the responsibility of handling elections. Some persons are arguing that they are not transparent. They are not entirely independent.
And I'd like to ask, now that you talk about voting, if you're a first-time voter, as the election beckons in few months, what role will first-time and younger voters play politics? What do you think will be at the forefront of their decision-making when they stand before the ballot?
A lot. A first-time voter between 18 and 21, or maybe someone that's never voted before but decides because of the economic hardship wants to. You look at the number. You look at your basic means of survival. Those uncles that used to give you money before, do they still do it? Do you have better power supply? Do you pay more now on transport? Are healthcare systems better? Are educational systems, are they in good shape? Are your roads within your estate or where your neighborhood, are they better? Do you have access to clean water? Your data, that digital public infrastructure, is it better? Security, is it better? These are the questions you ask. If you enter market to buy something, and if you want to buy from any of the platforms, are they cheaper? These are the questions that would inform your choices. And I appreciate the role of social media. People don't understand the role of social media in democracy. People are not speaking up. We now have content creators, skit economy, people using the skit economy, young people creating a means of survival for themselves and having a voice, right, to critique the government and hold them accountable. People are now calling out governments on social media. People post roads, people post dilapidated schools and hospitals. And the government, maybe out of shame or honesty, they fix those things. So young people, the Gen Zs, I trust that generation well enough for them to know, especially if you're independent, if you have a source of livelihood, or you don't feed from the government, or you're not a political appointee of the government, your thinking would naturally be rational and you're not hungry, right? Your
Yeah,
thinking will be rational.
I agree with you. I mean, younger generation is especially important because economic policy does not only determine what people can buy today, it determines what kind of future they can imagine for tomorrow. And with this, Victor, I would like to deepen this conversation. There was a time when the expected journey was relatively clear. Obtain an education, find a work, build a career, rent a home or buy, start a family, and gradually improve your quality of life. For many young Nigerians, that sequence now feels almost fictional. Victor, as a development economist, what concerns you more? Youth unemployment itself or the deeper loss of confidence that effort will never be rewarded, no matter how well you are schooled?
So let me be honest with you, right? Nigeria has a skills gap problem. You know, the founder of the Money Point came up sometime last month or last 2 months to say that they wanted to hire certain skills they didn't see Nigerians fitting for those
I think
positions.
that's Flutterwave.
And a lot of people dragged them online. But I told people, let's be honest. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala made an emphatic statement. She said a lot of Nigerian graduates are not employable. Do you think she said it out of hate? There's a skills gap issue. Can I be honest with you, Joseph? You might be shocked that if you have 1 million you want to invest in Nigeria, with your experience living outside of Africa, you might be shocked that one of your biggest challenges will be hiring the right talent to manage your investment. It will be one of the greatest shock you have. I mean, there's a skills gap issue. Take, for instance, Germany is the biggest economy in Europe, right? China is the biggest in Asia, the second biggest in the world. They focused on technical education. Before now, we used to have people who trade tests, technical schools.
Yeah, go to
They earn a
vocational.
living for themselves. Yes, they are plumbers, certified plumbers. They do some skills. They are welders, and they earn a decent living for themselves. There's a huge skills. Let me give an example. A particular company was hired by Lagos State government to do a contract, and they told Lagos State government that they could not find, I think, around 3,000 to 5,000 engineers in Nigeria, that they were going to import talents from India and some parts of the world. The Lagos State government said no. Suspend that project for 6 months. Train 3,000 or 5,000 Nigerians that you need for that project. After 6 months, then we can commence the project. And they did, because there's a huge skills gap. See, Nigerians don't need a lot of engineers. We need technicians. Nigeria needs people who go back to technical education, not even university education. Take, for instance, in Germany, those who produce some of the big cars, the Mercedes-Benz, the Porsche,
No,
the
they are not
BMW,
graduates.
they are not. Do you understand? So we need to go back to that skills issue. I mean, James Robinson said in one of his books, Why Nations Fail, he said one of the agents of transformation, he gave two. He said one is education, two is technology. And I campaign that a lot of Nigerians, the literacy rate in Nigeria is high. I mean, literacy rate, I don't mean just being able to read and write. I mean, people are battling with literacy issues. Education is key. Adoption of technology is still low. Find technology not as the machine, but the knowledge to operate the machine. The kind of sophisticated technologies we have in Nigeria, if the foreigners operating those technologies, they leave it, can Nigerians operate it? Do we have the technical know-how to operate these machines? So there's a huge skills gap issue. Take, for instance, tech. Tech don't care whether you went to Harvard. It doesn't care whether you went to a state university. If you're very good, nobody cares what you studied. Can you create this app? Put yourself on LinkedIn. You will get massive paying jobs in USDs. A lot of young people don't want that route. Some are also not given the platform to build that route. Some are also informed but are doing little or nothing to upskill themselves, unlearn, relearn. Curriculum in the university does not marry what you find in reality in
Yeah,
work idea.
I like to, in defense of the educational structure, do you think there's a deliberate attempt by public office holders to undermine education in the country?
So I agree. Investment in education, UNESCO recommends 26%, right? It's just at the state level, you see some states that even budget up to 30%, some 25%. Kanu, for instance, Borno State. These two states, I can tell you, consistently have budgeted up to about 30%. There is low investment in education at the tertiary level. I agree. Bulk of the investment you see in education is at the primary and secondary level. But the problem now is the transitioning rate. What's the rationale? If you see your two brothers, one went to the university, even have a master's with no job, and the second, without university education, is either trading and is making money. You will naturally tilt towards the one. There is low incentive for education in Nigeria. But that is not to say that those who are already educated are not earning out a living for themselves. There is this book called Bright Continent, written by Dialogue, but it talks about the Kanju spirit. The Kanju spirit of a Nigerian is that spirit of an African. Is that spirit that, regardless of the challenges, you try to eke out a living for yourself, right? Let me give you a small example. Look at the skit economy. I like to use that sector because a lot of Nigerians.
It is now an economy.
Yes, it's a massive economy. They earn in USDs. You have talent. Maybe nobody gave you talent. Nobody gave you the chance. Nobody gave you the opportunity. You eke out a living for yourself, right? If you're not in the menu, then you're part of the discussion, right? Some people struggle and find themselves in the table where it matters through creating something mainly because the government is not funding enough, especially at tertiary level. And that's why my argument is on the technical education. After secondary school, you must not be a university graduate for you to feed, fine, and earn a living for yourself. Yeah.
Your work also covers women economic empowerment. So since we speak about this, let's see how it plays out across gender. Economic crises are often discussed in gender-neutral languages, yet women frequently carry a disproportionate share of unpaid care, food security, and informal work. How is the current crisis experienced differently by Nigerian women? You've worked closely with them. This challenge of unemployment, particularly young women and mothers.
So I appreciate global trend now. There are a lot of conversations around gender inclusion. There are a lot of conversations around financial inclusion. Part of the projects I was trying to work on this past week, they were saying there's a program they want to do, and they say they want 70% to be women. These are programs coming up. They are targeted and specialized funding now as we speak, either through loan, access to credit for women. There are some schemes that give tax incentives to women-owned business. You see specialized funding, they say specifically for women-owned businesses.
Yes.
You see some organizations will tell you now, certain projects, they will give it to you if up to 50 or 40% of your management and staff are women, right? So there are intentional efforts to ensure that women are carried along compared to what it used to be before, in terms of, especially in the private sector. But if you look at the public sector, for instance, they're not doing well. So take, for instance, we used to have about 7 or 6 female senators before, but currently we have only 4 women senators. And can I surprise you? Before even the 4th one entered, Senator Natasha from Kogi State.
Yeah.
The 3 senators we had in Nigeria were from the 3 most developed and cosmopolitan cities in Nigeria, which is Lagos, Port Harcourt, and FCT. So does it tell you a story? There's a connection between the level of development of a city,
yes,
and the level of accommodation, inclusion of women in leadership, right? But if you also look at banking, I tell people, banking, we have seen a lot of female CEOs. Zenith Bank is female, Fidelity is female, FCMB is female. About up to 6 to 7 banks have their CEOs as women. They're doing well compared to before. Let's also take, for instance, healthcare. I did a study one time for Women Lift Health.
Yes.
On looking at healthcare is female dominated, but the level of leadership is male dominated. So they're asking the question why. Look at even education, especially at secondary and primary level. Majority of the teachers, if you do a study, you'll find a majority of them are women, right? Look at agriculture. Majority of those who venture into farming are women. There's a lot we still need to do, especially from the public sector in terms of leadership. Now you're seeing about the gender bill, reserved for women in Nigeria, which I strongly support. There are conversations where some high-level conversations are held. If you don't have women looking at it from the gender lens, they can unconsciously exclude women. There is this book called...
Is it because of how the cultures structure societal hierarchy in Nigeria, or there's a deliberate attempt to undermine women? What do you think?
So it's both ways. If you read this book, Leaning by Shelley Salzberg, she had worked in World Bank, Facebook, and then Google. She wrote a book, and there was a concept she brought, a concept of unconscious bias. Some men exclude women unconscious. They don't know they're excluding them. They feel they are doing them favor. Take, for instance, you have a married woman in your office, married man. You feel because the woman is married, she has smaller children, she will ordinarily want to stay with her children, right? If there are external trip that requires going outside the country or traveling to other states, you unconsciously prefer the man to go, because you can call the man today and tell him you're traveling tomorrow. If you call the woman, she have little kids to look after. She might tell you she needs to see the consent of her husband. These are unconscious issues we don't know, right? But again, I tell people that the issue around patriarchy started from our religious books. And you know how sacred people hold religion. Our religious book, whether you're a Christian or a Muslim, they are patriarch in nature. The writing of those books are meant to favor men over women. And over the years, because we hold religion so dear to heart, we have built this unconscious understanding that men are superior to women. Right? We see it play out in cultures. The part of the country where I come from is one of the most expensive bride price in Nigeria. But they give men, that same part of Nigeria I come from, they give 10%, sometimes 8%. They will not give even a quarter, a pinch to a woman. But when it comes to bride price, the community will gather the men, the women, they will collect hefty bride price from the woman. Right?
So women do not have right to inheritance, basically.
Yes. So some of them are trying to make laws. It's getting slightly better now. So are making intentional effort. And let me even tell you, one of the fastest growing economy in Africa, Rwanda, are women dominate. They are the best in the world in terms of gender inclusion. From my last check, they are the best in Africa, and they are doing incredibly well. So I tell people that there is no society that can develop without involving your women as part of the development process. When I did a course on health economics, it will tell you that when you marry an educated woman, one of the benefits is that they make better choices. They make better informed decisions for the home, right? If your children are not feeling well, an educated woman will take the child to the hospital, run a test. They will not self-medicate. They are conscious of hygiene. Their choices are better. And you see it translating quality of life for their children. Take, for instance, someone like Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. It took a man that never saw her as a threat. So women's economic empowerment does not mean relinquishing your headship, or empowering your wife does not necessarily mean relinquishing your headship to a woman. No. In an event of divorce, in an event of death, a woman that has a strong financial standing can cope, can forge ahead, than one that has to fall back to zero.
Thank you very much, Victor, for reflecting this, this way. I will now will now digress deeper into what builds confidence in a nation. When a nation cannot hold the confidence of its people, the consequences do not remain inside its borders. They travel with its citizens, its reputation, and the stories about it abroad. Recently, there's been a lot of skimmish conversations here and there, related to, how Nigerians are being treated abroad. Let us turn to South Africa, for example. Recent anti-migrant violence has again placed Nigeria and other African countries in danger. Migrants have been blamed for unemployment, crime, and pressure on public service. Some legally resident people have reportedly faced harassment, displacement, and violence. The language commonly used is xenophobic. Others prefer Afrophobia because the hostility frequently targets Black African immigrants in particular way. Victor, from an economic perspective, why do migrants become convenient targets when a country is experiencing unemployment, inequality, and declining public trust?
Fantastic question. My assessment is, again, I want us to look at the issue objectively, right? South Africans are wrong. Looking at the apartheid regime, the role Nigeria played to support Nelson Mandela and some of those that are on exile, to accommodate them, support the apartheid, and ensure that they have Black freedom in South Africa. To tell foreigners to leave is actually disheartening. It's sad. It takes us 4 or 5 steps backwards in terms of development. But I want us to also look at the fundamental issues of object. In 1982, 1983, Nigerians asked Ghanaians to leave Nigeria. That was the Ghana Must Go movement, if you remember, 1982, 1983. And I tell people, South Africans telling Nigerians to go is the fundamental issue of shifting their excuse, blaming someone else for their own misfortune, for their governance misfortune, for their leadership failure. And that's why you find their leaders not speaking up. But I also want us to know that Nigerians in the past have also been xenophobic. We have asked Ghanaians in the past to leave. And I also want us to address the fundamental reason why they are asking us to. South Africa is not the only country telling Nigerians to leave. We have seen over 33,000 Nigerians deported from different parts of Europe, right? We have seen countries ask Nigerians, even Ghana, asking Nigerians to leave. because there's a fundamental issue we must sit down as a nation and address. Nigerians, do we have tendencies to be xenophobic? Yeah. Even down here in Nigeria, an Igbo man is telling a Yoruba man to, an Igbo man is telling an Hausa man to leave his state. An Hausa man is telling an Igbo man to leave. A Yoruba man in Lagos is telling Igbos to leave Lagos. We have tendencies to even be xenophobic if given the opportunity. So we might be hypocrites to clearly be accusing South Africa of being xenophobic for something we have done in the past and are currently doing in the present. We must fix the fundamental issues, which is governance. If leadership and governance is better in Nigeria, you will have limited number of Nigerians leaving Nigerians for survival to other countries. If we fix the fundamental issue which you raised earlier, the issue of Nigerians being too polarized and divided along ethnic and religious lines, we need to fix those issues. Nigerians are loud in other countries. If you go to other countries, they say if you go to Romans, you behave like the Romans. You respect their law. You respect their tradition. There have been documented cases of Nigerians doing some illegal businesses in South Africa, for instance.
Yeah.
Also, a large number of Nigerians in South Africa who are lecturers, who are teaching. They had not asked those ones to leave. There are a number of Nigerians who are medical doctors in South Africa.
Yeah, I know one personally. He's a professor and he's still there.
Yes. So me, myself that is speaking, my cousin was killed in South Africa for like 10 years, right? Then it wasn't even concept of xenophobia wasn't as pronounced as it is now. He was killed in for no reason. They just brought him back in body bag and we buried him about 10 years ago. My own blood cousin, right? So we must fix the fundamental complaints. Why even Qatarians, even UAE is denying Nigerians visa. There are fundamental problems we must fix. Both governance issues, both character issues. We worship money. We worship flaunting wealth.
On this point, so does it make sense for Nigerians in diaspora to bear the responsibility and carry the shame of failures of governance back home?
No, it's not. It's not fair. It's not. It is what it is. So if you even do a statistics, maybe the percentage spoiling the image of the country might just be maybe 20, 30%. Just a few percentage, right? Rubbing off on other. And it's so unfair because I know a lot of Nigerians are doing legitimate business in South Africa, in different parts of the world, are doing legitimate jobs in this country. And it's so unfair that maybe 1 out of or 2 out of every 10 does something little and then it's being generalized to the other. Nigerians in diaspora bearing the brunt of bad leadership. Somebody telling you that your country is fantastically corrupt. Somebody telling you that your country is on a watch list because of terrorism, because of religious extremism, because some people even telling you that your leaders are even killing you. So why, if foreigners kill you outside, why are you complaining? Is it different from what's happening to you in your country? We must fix those issues. We must fix those fundamental issues. We have the fundamental chance and opportunity to right the wrong if we think the country is not going in the direction it needs.
Thank you for reflecting this. So I'd like to bring the Tyla visa test into this conversation. The South African popular musician, Grammy winner Tyla, has been rumored to have a show in Nigeria in December. Although right now it looks like she has called up the show. It is not very clear. But let me now give you the question that may create the most comments beneath this episode. Suppose you are a Nigerian Minister for Foreign Affairs. South African artist Tyla is scheduled to perform in Nigeria in December. At the same time, Nigerians are demanding a stronger response to attacks on their compatriot in South Africa. Most of these attacks, people expect Tyla to respond, but Tyla is just an individual. She's not a politician, but because she's South African. So I'd like to ask you, would you grant her a visa to perform in Nigeria?
No, I would not. To be honest, in international relations, that's what they call the law of reciprocity. Right? Burna Boy, who is one of the biggest musicians in Nigeria, who's a Grammy Award winner, was denied visa. In fact, the show was cancelled in South Africa a couple of years ago. I think 2019 or 2020.
Around 20.
Yeah, exactly. And then we also have, I think, one of the recent. Iron Star, who was also denied visa. Right. So there's a law of reciprocity. You can't always claim to be the nice guy. If South Africans say they don't want Nigerians in their country, as Nigerians have sent about 4 or 5 different flights to evacuate their citizens. It makes no moral sense from the moral standpoint that you come to celebrate a renowned Grammy Award winner from South Africa when there's a high level of discord between the both countries. It makes absolutely no sense, right? So in that case, I would apply the law of reciprocity. I would deny her visa with her team. If I'm even the police or the security agencies, I won't allow that event to hold because there's a possibility there could be breakdown of law and order if it holds. I would apply that law. And I also think it's hard time Nigerian government sit down with South African government. I have some diplomatic conversation. Nigerians have helped South Africa. If the current generation, the Gen Zs, don't recognize that fact, it is fine and good. But it's hard time we begin to sit back and tell ourselves South Africa is not bigger than Nigeria. I mean, economy, if not for the devaluation of our currency, Nigeria is the biggest economy in Africa.
So, but
Nigeria
others,
is.
I mean, I agree with you on this point of, policy of reciprocity, but others would argue that denying an individual artist entry for the failures of our government would reproduce the same logic of collective punishment, what we condemn in xenophobic attacks. Is that the stronger argument? Do you not think Nigeria have prided itself as a giant of Africa? Is this not an opportunity to show that they are really the giants?
No. So Nigeria have always shown that they are giants in the past. They are South African business. There is Standard Chartered. There is MTA. I mean, there is multi-choice. A lot of them in Nigeria. Nigerians are not destroying their businesses. ShopRite left. These are South African business. Nigerians are not going to boycott them. Nigerians are not even going to vandalize their properties. South Africans are doing. That's enough to show that you're big brother.
So you don't think her visa could be used as a platform for African solidarity and public condemnation of?
No. So the point is, has she even made a comment condemning xenophobia? No, she hasn't. Right? Maybe she's trying to also play safe by not her own citizens of her own country. But Malema, I don't know if you follow Malema. He has been very vocal.
Yeah, Julius Malema.
To say what South Africans are doing is wrong. He called them local vigilantes. He said they are disturbing and taking laws into their hands. It's not supposed to be so. He has been vocal about Nigeria, brother.
Is reciprocal hostility ever an effective foreign policy instrument?
It's reciprocal, not hostility. And like I said, even if she comes, assuming they don't even give her that, if you are the government, Lagos State government, or you're the IG of police, do you think you allow that event to hold? You want them to kill her? I mean, it enters the news that Nigeria killed a Grammy Award winner African in Nigeria. You don't want it to degenerate to that level. So assuming she's even granted a view, ideal thing to do as a government, if you see citizens are being hostile to a particular event, some very dark man and others are saying it shouldn't hold. The proper thing for you to do is call off that event. Don't allow the event to hold.
So you think for security reasons rather than for reciprocal reasons? Or both?
Both. So let me give you an example.
So security and reciprocity.
Yes, let me give you an example. Reciprocity, because I mentioned two, Burna Boy and our own female and Ayastar that was denied. There are a lot of South Africans coming to conferences here in Abuja. They're not denied. There are a lot of Nigerians. I have some friends who went to South Africa last 2 months. I have some who will be going in November or December to South Africa for some energy summit. They're not being denied visa, right? But what I'm saying is, when people say aura for aura, in this case, you deny world-renowned music star, Grammy Award winners from Nigeria visa, if at all the government goes ahead. It's just a reciprocity. It's not violence. Reciprocity.
I am not sure if Burna Boy was denied visa, but I do know that the show was cancelled.
Yes. That's correct.
So maybe for security reasons, the show was called off.
That's the same thing I told you.
But Ayastar was denied visa.
Yes, but eventually, I mean, it's like two of them is like they're competing. You see the style of their music.
Yes, I agree.
That's the right thing for me I think. But if I'm the president or if I'm the minister of foreign affairs, I would even have I will have a televised diplomatic conversation with South African ambassador tonight. I will have a live televised event, right, where we sit down, his team versus my team, and tell them to their face, this is grossly unacceptable. South Africans have law. If Nigerians are caught in committing any crime in your country, prosecute those Nigerians. Don't label every Nigerian as being bad. There are a lot of Nigerians contributing in South Africa more than South Africa is contributing to Nigeria. There are a lot of South African business benefiting South African economy and their citizens more than Nigerian companies in South Africa. And I'll tell you, if it continues, we might be forced, even if not intention, we might be forced to make certain hard decisions against those companies.
For
instance, we have a senator who's pushing saying that freeze all the assets of South African companies and use it to compensate Nigerians that lost their properties in South Africa. We haven't gone that route yet. But I would tell the ambassador, if you don't, and send a strong message to the South African government, if you don't halt this, now not even xenophobia, they have the right to tell Nigerians to leave, it's their choice. But if you don't halt the killing of Nigerians in South Africa unprovoked, we might be forced to take difficult diplomatic decisions against South Africa. And like I said, we are the largest. Nigeria's population is 3 times that of South Africa. We are the largest in population. We are the largest in economy. In creative economy, they are not better than Nigeria. In sports, they are not better than Nigeria. Think of it in any angle you want to look at it.
Okay.
In diaspora strength, they are not better.
I guess the real issue now is larger than one artist or one individual. It is whether a confident state responds strategically to injustice or merely symbolically. With this, I will be winding down this conversation. One final question, Victor. First, I want to close by returning to the young Nigerian we discussed earlier, the graduate who has done everything right but can no longer see a clear future. Imagine that person is listening now. They do not want another motivational speech. They want one honest reason to believe that Nigeria can still become a place in which effort, talent, and integrity are rewarded. What would you say to them, and what must the country actually do to make your answer credible?
Thank you very much for this question. So if you follow closely in the last few years in Nigeria, you see a large influx of Indians. You see a large influx of Chinese, Lebanese into Nigeria. There's a reason why these guys are coming to Nigeria. And within this same period, or what we call capital flight or Japa syndrome or brain drain of Nigerians leaving the country, the river, there are untapped opportunities in Nigeria. One of the richest men in Saudi, I think the prince or so, he made an emphatic statement. He said, investing in Africa without investing in Nigeria is like not investing in Africa at all. There are huge potential. We can turn our brain drain to brain gain. We can turn the complaints to opportunity. There are challenges that need solution. If you have a product that can even serve 1,000 families every single day, 1,000 out of over 230 million people, you make a good living for yourself.
What kind of products? We have not established that having that certificate does not equal a successful living or a livable livelihood. You need to have something that translates to everyday livelihood as a work. As a young graduate, talking about a product that can service 1,000 families per day. Could you give some instances?
There are so many products. So if you want to look at fintechs, Nigerians are doing it. One of the recent unicorns is Money Point. It was a group of Nigerians. And then we should also imbibe the culture of collaboration, right? Collaboration is big. So these days you find out co-founders more compared to before when you used to have one founder. Because people now know that I have this talent, but I don't have the resources. But there's someone that has the resources, he doesn't have the talent I have. Can we collaborate? It brings the money. I do the strategy and implement it. Need for strong collaboration.
Among
Take for instance, among young.
I'll tell you something I've experienced, here. I noticed that most fast food here, what we call street food in Nigeria, what we have here is that young people between the age of, 16, 17, 18, max 23, 24, they come together and they will buy franchise. Let's say something like a New York pizza, they'll just buy a franchise and they will open one in their local neighborhood, and they grow from there. Do you think such kind of initiative can work in a place like Nigeria?
Yes, I co-founded a company with somebody I met in my church. She's religious. We met, and I knew that he has the talent, and he also feels I have the talent and skills he also requires. We formed a company called African Creative Continuum, right? We're still trying to scale up because we know there is power in collaboration, right? You don't find a lot of young people do it. Your circle really matters. The quality of social. There are people who get jobs. People call it a connection or what. If you have quality social capital, for instance, I have a book
network.
Yes, I have a book club called Arete Book Club. We read books on leadership, policy, development of business. At least one book every month. Today is the 1st of August. This month we're reading Dare to Lead by Brain. Right? We read at least one book. I know the opportunities I have gotten from that knowledge community. We're over 3. I've met Nigerians who are in Germany. I've met Nigerians in the US, UK that ordinarily, if not for that knowledge community, I would not have met. One of the ladies that recommended me to an opportunity last year, a short-term contract, it was in the book club. I met her, just one. All right. The quality of the spaces or social gatherings, places you go out for, really matters. Right? I mean, I posted something on my WhatsApp. If a tree is not doing well, people will not blame the environment, the soil. People will blame the tree for not doing well, not the environment. And I used to tell people, a can be planted to and be harvested within 3 months and be cut down afterward. But a palm fruit can be planted to, it will take over 6 to 7 years for it to mature. But if it starts producing, they will never cut it. Would you rather be a corn or you're
Choice
going
is
to be a
yours.
palm fruit? Right. My father conclusively used to make one analogy. He calls it the egg analogy. He told me, son, if you think of an egg, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? My father is a math teacher before he read. So what's the first thing that comes to your mind if you think of an egg? I said, a hen or a chicken. He said, you thought correct. He said, but are you aware that a fish, depending on the species, some fishes lay up to 8,000 eggs. But a hen that lays one egg will crow and make noise all through the night. He said, if you don't make your noise, nobody will do it for you. You might be very skilled and talented in one corner in Nigeria. Nobody knows you exist. There's the power in creating a good visibility and image for yourself. Hang out in quality social platforms. Engage with people, network with people. Make your noise. Talk about what you do. Talk about your skills. Join platforms like LinkedIn and discuss your opportunities. Somebody somewhere is watching. You shouldn't be on Facebook argue whether APC, PDP, ADC, NDC, whiling away time, right? Except you're in and out of it. People now make living from posting clothes that are not their own clothes, sharing it on WhatsApp. And when somebody say, I like this clothes, they will now go and get it from the original owner and add small thing on top just to earn a living. It is not rosy everywhere. Nigeria's challenges can be more, or it might be more in terms of government not providing support. But there are 1,001 people who have earned a living for themselves, not completely relying on the government. And today they are being celebrated. But I leave with that question. Do you rather want to be a corn, make it quick, and then get caught? Or you want to be, the palm fruit that plants takes time, consistency for it into fruit. And when we start fruit, it is for life. That's my concluding statement. Thank you very much.
Victor, this is a very reflective way to draw this conversation to a close. Thank you for a thoughtful and deeply humane conversation. This discussion reminds us that the economy is not an object sitting outside society. It enters our kitchen. It shapes our relationships. It determines whether young people postpone their dreams, abandon them, or carry them to another country. It affects the dignity with which Nigerians travel, the confidence with which they are defended abroad, and the way others interpret the Nigerian identity. As we approach 2027 elections, political campaigns, we are already offering explanation, promises, and completing visions of progress. But citizens will always bring their own evidence. They will bring the price of food. They will bring the cost of rent. So they will bring the job application that received no response. They will bring the relative who left the country and the family member abroad who now supports several households. And they will ask profound democratic questions. Has governance made it easier or harder for me to build a meaningful life? The answer to that question may shape who becomes the next Nigeria's president. My guest has been Victor Alikor, development economist and a specialist in public finance, development financing, and resource mobilization. So thank you for joining us today on Diaspora Glitch Podcast.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. I appreciate it. Joe, good to have you on the call once.
Thank you. And to everyone listening, thank you for spending this time with us. Wherever you are in Nigeria, elsewhere in Africa, or across the diaspora, we would like to hear your thoughts. Should economic hardship determine outcome of general elections? Is Nigeria doing enough to protect its citizens abroad? And would you grant Tyla the visa if you are the Nigerian Minister for Foreign Affairs? Join the conversation respectfully in the comments. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and remember that behind every economic statistics is a human being trying to build a life. This is Diaspora Glitch Podcast. Thank you.